Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. And this year I'm doing a lot of recent boutique label releases, some from Criterion, but a whole lot more from Kino this year. They're releasing a lot of very movies that very much could go into the overlooked and almost forgotten movies. So today I'm going to talk about an August release from Kino 3 Into 2 Won't Go. And this is from 1969, and it's very much a overlooked film. I'm not sure if it's ever been out on physical release before, in DVD at least. And I saw this in 1969. In fact, I was doing movie reviews at the time, and I gave this a very positive review. I don't believe I've seen it since. I may have seen it on cable, but I doubt it. So that's a movie I always wanted to revisit. So we get a chance here to revisit a movie with some very big powerhouse talent involved in its making and its creators. We get star Rod Steiger. He's 43 years old here. He's very vibrant. He had recently won the Academy Award for In the Heat of the Night. He's playing with his real-life wife, Claire Bloom, and one of the great underappreciated stars, I think, of movies. They were both also theater actors. In fact, they met. They were married from '59 to '69, and they met while appearing in a stage play. The director is Peter Hall, not a name that movie lovers are that well acquainted with, but he was, in fact, probably the most prominent theater director of the second half of the 20th century in England. He started the Royal Shakespeare Company in 1960, which he was the director for about 8 years, and then for about 15 years he ran the National Theater, and he is, in fact, Sir Peter Hall. He becomes Sir Peter Hall for all his theatrical contributions to theater. And he did make a bunch of other films that weren't all that bad, but he certainly never found his niche in movie making as he did on stage. Judy Geeson, I'm going to call her Geeson. I think they refer to her as Geeson in the commentary, but everywhere else I've ever heard call her Judy Geeson. She had been in To Serve with Love with Sidney Poitier a few years before. She is sort of an emblem of the swinging 60s. Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush, some other films as well. She looks the type of what a 60s English young teenager, she's 19 here, would look like. And she's also a very good actress. She's really good in this film. And we get another acting royalty in the supporting cast. Dame Peggy Ashcroft plays Claire Bloom's mother in this film. Comes from Edna O'Brien, did the screenplay. Now, she was already an Irish novelist and playwright, and she's still with us and often mentioned as a candidate for the Nobel Prize. So there's some real talent here, and there's others too behind the scenes in the crew. It's a story about a traveling salesman, Rod Steiger, who picks up a hitchhiker, a teenage girl played by Judy Geeson, and hitchhiking was still a thing in the 1960s. It was made illegal, I think, in the States because of the various awful events that happened to hitchhikers. So you never see it again, but it was fairly common, and hitchhiking across country was a thing. So Rod Steiger's a traveling salesman, but he's the proverbial traveling salesman that is also a serial philanderer. But Judy Geeson, when she gets in the car, she looks herself as she's sizing up Rod Steiger. Who is he? She in fact carries a black book in which she records all her conquests and gives them a grade. in her travels. Um, it's one thing that the director Peter Hall does is he gets very subtle performances and glances, and so she's more than a match for this guy, and she's seductive, but there's also this dangerous element that we sense right from the first scene when she gets into the car. So Rod Steiger takes her to a hotel. He has his normal, one-night stand, returns home to his wife, played by Claire Bloom, and you can tell as he enters the home that she suspects that what he might well be doing in his travels. And then the film enters a whole new dimension when Judy Geeson arrives at the doorstep while he's out on another one of his travels, arrives on Claire Bloom's doorstep and intrudes into their life. But this marriage between Steiger and Bloom in the movie, which mirrored their own real life relationship, as this was made in '68, released in '69, and Bloom and Steiger do divorce in 1969. So there's a pathos, I think, real pathos to these marriage scenes. There's no children. That's part of the discord, and it's also mirroring, or the film is very much part of its time, because marriage was being questioned. The wife stays home, the husband goes out to work, goes on business trips, stays late in the office. What's he doing? And the wife is supposed to, in the old production code days, is to just endure it. This is the way men are. But now this is being questioned in the person of Judy Geeson, intruding into their relationship. So the production code has faded. So we get questioning of social institutions that were sometimes seen as sacred marriage. And so there's a newfound liberation in movies, and this film, I think 3 and 2 Won't Go, is very much a depiction of this liberation, both its positives and its negatives. So we see a 43-year-old man, a 19-year-old girl. At that time, it would be seen as certainly questionable at that time, but in today's neo-Puritanism of both left and right, of course, it's to be totally questioned just on that level itself. But the film doesn't really go where you might expect it to go in the 1960s, because you didn't know. I mean, that was part of the appeal of the movies of this era, is you never knew what was going to happen, but you would have expected with this newfound liberation, it might go to places, and it doesn't. It doesn't go there. There's ambiguity to this movie, to this screenplay. And that's probably why it's kind of an overlooked movie. It never falls into what we think might happen, and it's a very sad ending. Now, Peter Hall, like I say, a great theater director. He never really found his niche in movies. Perfect Friday, he did. That's a pretty good movie. I think he did a really good adaptation of The Homecoming, Harold Pinter's The Homecoming. In fact, Paul Rogers, who's there's very few roles in this movie, but Paul Rogers is very good in a small role here, and very much featured in Harold Pinter's The Homecoming. And he made some other very good movies, but he didn't really have a visual flair to his films. The setting here is really good in that much of the movie is set in a new development in the suburbs of London. So a lot of the houses haven't been fully built yet. There's not a lot of people living there. In fact, the house that Steiger and Bloom have moved into is undeveloped itself, the interior. So it has very much an empty quality to it. And when I was watching the film, because I recently resaw Joseph Losey's The Servant, which was made a few years before this film, I couldn't help thinking what Joseph Losey would have done with his inimitable mise en scène, especially in this location in the house. Um, in the same year, Losey made Secret Ceremony with Elizabeth Taylor and Mia Farrow, in which a house is explored in such great depth, as well as the house or the apartment in the Servant. And it reminded me of The Servant as well, because if you've ever seen the film, Dirk Bogarde plays a butler who basically turns on his master, or becomes sort of the servant master, who now becomes the servant, becomes the master. And you wonder, why does he do it? And I think in the same sense here, you get the same sort of situation where Judy Geeson is intruding upon a relationship. And what is she doing? What is she up to? Why is she doing what she's doing? I think this adds, as it does in The Servant, it adds a layer of interest that sort of propels the film into more than just an ordinary film that has been overlooked. Now, Rod Steiger is not one of my favorite actors because he goes over the top quite a bit in films. Here, he is restrained, and there's a great deal of pathos in the scenes with Claire Bloom. She's magnificent, just a magnificent presence in movies, and this one in particular. I think she's 37, 38 in this film. She's absolutely beautiful, and she always, whenever I see her, brings back to mind Charlie Chaplin's Limelight, made in the early 50s when she was very young. And she had this beautifully expressive eyes. And so there's a lot going on here. And this is a film that doesn't deserve to be neglected. It's not just a sign of the times of the late 1960s. There's some really interesting performances and relationships in this film. And it does involve nudity, this production code. So the American television version took out, and the American television version is included in this release, even though it's not mentioned for some reason on the as part of the special features, where they cut out the nudity, and they added about 20 minutes. I'm not sure that I ever saw it, but and I haven't checked it out yet. But Peter Hall and Ed O'Brien, they were appalled by what Universal, the studio that financed this film and owned it for American television, did. So they had their names taken off the film. But the film did get a pretty good release. I mean, it wasn't a minor film, and in fact, it got a rave review from Vincent Canby in the New York Times, and Claire Bloom. All the performances, and particularly Claire Bloom, who gives a very subtle performance. And in fact, Steiger is really good here. He looks fit. We get nudity of Judy Geeson. Luckily, we don't get nudity of Rod Steiger, although his previous film, The Illustrated Band, which is another sort of forgotten film made from the Ray Bradbury stories, he is quite nude in that film. Lower spirited here, and he does look in pretty good shape. And like I say, he is restrained. Now we get a commentary from Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson, and they are well used by Kino on many different releases. They know everything there is to know about movies, so we get a lot of great information about this movie. They tend, as always, to go off in all kinds of tangents. It's almost like a duel to see who can mention the most movies. So they go off in these tangents for a long period of time, and we lose sight of the movie that they're actually giving a commentary on. The positive element of these types of commentaries is they're so enthusiastic about all these movies that really don't have much to do with 3 Into 2 Won't Go, that they're so enthusiastic about them that you really want to see them, or in my case, a lot of times re-see them, because they too are sort of forgotten films. So overall, just another terrific Kino release with excellent performances, and kudos again to Kino for making the plunge into movies, which I'm sure only me and a few other people are going to buy, but at least it's out there, and I appreciate that. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.